Hey everyone, welcome to the Week 12 recap of the Danker Family Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Jensen, and boy, we are just about getting there to playoff time. It's 2 weeks left in the regular season. Should be a very exciting finish to our league. So let's go ahead and dive right in to the standings to see how everything turned out. As you can see, we have our first playoff clincher, Tom Danker, Beach Desert with his 10th win of the season. And obviously, not only did he clinch the division and the playoffs with his win, but he clinched the number one overall seed because of Adrian's loss to Carroll. So good on you, Uncle Tom. You're the one seed, no pressure. So should be interesting to see how Tom does in the playoffs. There's one spot filled and three spots left, two in the East and one more in the West. It's going to be a very exciting finish. John and Joan are only one game apart with 2 games left, and I believe they play each other next week, so that's going to be very huge for playoffs. Unfortunately, me and Garrett both got eliminated because we both lost. So RIP to us, Garrett. We joined Carroll in the first three to be eliminated from playoff contention. In the East, we have Adrian still up top, and Carey is now tied with Adrian at 7-5. And I also believe Adrian and Carey play each other next week. So we have two huge matchups in intra-division or whatever you call it, interdivision matchups next week that are huge for the playoff hopes. And Carey's been she was down at fourth place for a while this season. She jumped all the way back, all the way up to number two. So Carey right now is in the playoffs if it were to end today. Ben losing another one down to 6-6, and Dad losing as well. He's down to 6-6. So Ben and Nels are they're in desperation mode right now. They pretty much either got to win out or win one, and maybe hope Adrian and Carey both. Well, they can't both lose. One of them's going to win next week. So for Ben and Nels, yeah, they pretty much got to win out or win out or maybe win one and hope Carey or Adrian uh, each lose one or something like that. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how it goes. Yeah, and then looking at streaks, like we said, Carey 4 game win streak. She's the hottest team in fantasy right now. No other way to put it. And obviously Ben down here losing four straight. So Ben was once second place in the entire league behind Tom. He was a game behind Tom at one point, and now he's lost four in a row, and he's in very bad shape right now. And hoping for the best, Ben, but we'll see. Now going to the scoreboard from this past week. Obviously, most points goes to John Lopp, getting 164.06 points. He had just an epic day. Like his entire lineup did incredible. And we'll dive more into that on this recap. Fewest points goes to Adrian at 108.2. Now that's very odd. You don't see every single team getting 100 plus points that much. So for if Adrian having the least amount of points, 108.2 seems pretty high for the least amount, I'd say. Because usually you'd see like at least two, three, maybe four teams under 100, but not this time. Everyone hit 100, so interesting. Best win's gonna go to Carol. She dominated her matchup against Adrian. She won by 42.2 points, and toughest loss goes to Garrett. He was up the entire weekend against Tom, even going into the final matchup last night, Monday Night Football. And they both each had a player playing last night, and Tom's player, which was I think it was Hawkinson, just went off, and Khalil Herbert didn't do anything for the Bears. So Garrett just loses that one by 4.5 points there. So yeah, tough luck, Garrett. Um, yeah, so that was it. That was that. I did get only two right again, so that's back-to-back weeks where I only get two of the five picks right. So my overall record right now is 21 or no, 29 and 31. So yeah, two below 500 for me. But let's go ahead and dive right into the matchups and just recap what went on. First matchup, obviously myself versus my mom, son versus mother. Joan got the victory here. I predicted I would win, and I was just being hopeful for my very slim playoff hopes, which didn't really last. So, congratulations, Mom, for beating me and helping yourself that much, getting yourself that much closer to the playoffs. Even though you haven't clinched it yet, you still got to win at least one more. But yeah, Mom's top performers: Josh Allen, Raheem Mostert, Garrett Wilson. That had a surprisingly good game. Like for it's all. I mean, he's usually the best player on the Jets offense anyway, but just the fact that he was able to get that many points with how atrocious their offense is pretty insane. And the Cowboys defense getting 14 too. So those are she pretty much had like a big four, and maybe you could add in Christian Kirk too, even though he underhit his projection at 12.9. For myself, my running backs were great. Derrick Henry and Tony Pollard both 20 plus points. Keenan Allen did his typical thing. He's always my best player it seems like. And even Tank Dell, I started Tank Dell and he did pretty well. And even my defense, I started the Giants defense against the Patriots, and that really seemed to be a good play, even though honestly I could have played the 49ers, but 2 points that wouldn't have made that much of a difference. But in the end, though, I will say for mom, Josh Allen definitely carried her to victory right there. 39.66 points. I mean, that he was just incredible. I feel really bad for him because Josh Allen's a great player. I mean, I know he turns the ball over a lot, but you just feel for the guy because like everyone feels like, oh, it's Buffalo's year, and then now they're just losing a bunch of close games, and it's you just feel for him. But yeah, Josh Allen definitely carried mom this week. I mean, without that, if he just has a normal like 22 point performance, that could have been the difference because I only lost by 13, I think. So, just a big game for Josh Allen helped mom. For me, it came down to two players for me, and it was I mean you could say three if you want to include Dalton Kincaid under hitting his projection, but I'm mainly going to focus on Adam Thielen and Tua Tagovailoa. When your quarterback only gets 7 points, like it's very disappointing, especially when the team won by a lot. Like you look at the score, like 34-13, but no, Tua threw a couple interceptions. That definitely hurt. And he only threw for one touchdown too, yet only still managed to only get 7.82 points. So not good. And then Adam Thielen, yeah, that was I'm starting to lose faith in Adam Thielen. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like I'm out of the playoffs anyway, but just if I want to just still be competitive and still, try to play spoiler for the next couple of weeks, it's I don't know. I was just very disappointed. He's been the one downside of that trade I made with Nels, where we traded for Najee Harris and Devonta Adams for Pollard and Thielen. Pollard's been great. Thielen hasn't. Um, so yeah, that's for me moving forward. Tua has just been a frustrating quarterback to deal with. Just got to hope he plays better soon. I mean, I'm not really hoping for much anymore since I'm out of the playoffs, but whatever. And then I'll probably bench Thielen moving forward just because, Panthers are not that good now. Yeah, we'll see how he is with their new head coach. But uh, yeah. And for mom, definitely for her, I would say for her, it's just basically figuring out if she needs to get a new tight end or not. Jake Ferguson's had a couple of down weeks. So I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily go away from him, but it's just something to think about. And then I would really consider someone else at flex. Romeo Dobbs, he can go off, that's for sure, but he's very touchdown reliant. If he doesn't score a touchdown in a game, he doesn't score much in fantasy, and that was pretty obvious last week on Thanksgiving. Not really getting much. So Romeo Dobbs is a huge risk. It's a high risk, high reward play at flex. So just something to consider for mom. And she'll be able to play Brock Purdy next week. Since Josh Allen, oh, that's gonna be tough. I just realized that mom's got she's got an unfortunate bye. Josh Allen, arguably her best player on her fantasy team, is gonna be on a bye next week. So she's not gonna have Brock Purdy. I mean, now she has a game up on John, so a loss for mom next week wouldn't be the end of the world, but it certainly wouldn't help. And but yeah, she's got to hope Brock Purdy just does pretty well next week, although he is playing Philly. So, but Josh Allen played Philly, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Um, Moving on to the next matchup, John Lopp versus Ben Danker. I predicted Ben would win, and I got this one wrong as well. John got the win, getting himself he's still one game behind Joan, keeping that distance right there, staying within striking distance of the second place spot in the West. Um, I mean, obviously, John's entire lineup, other than his kicker, because his kicker got -1 points, but if you take out the kicker, his entire lineup got at least 15.1 points or more. That's just what can you do? That's just such a tough luck matchup for Ben. But yeah, I mean, CJ Stroud 30, Bijan Robinson 27, Waddle 19, Chris Olave got 18, and he didn't even play the whole game. He only played like 3 quarters. I think he got a concussion in the third quarter in that game. And Jonathan Taylor, before he got hurt, he got 21 points too. And the defense even got 17. So it's just an overall great performance by John's team. Played it almost perfectly, except Gabe Davis scored a little bit more on the bench. But that's just nitpicking on my end. For Ben, Christian McCaffrey did his thing. AJ Brown was all right. Calvin Ridley had another good game, so he's starting to come back to form. David Njoku did pretty well, and the Patriots defense did okay. Um, Yeah, the thing for Ben was it was just a tough luck matchup. Like there really wasn't anything he could have done, even if he had started Jacoby Myers and AJ Dillon or Cole Kmet or Rashawn Johnson. It wouldn't have mattered. Um, it was just very tough luck. Nothing you could do. So it's just some, hey, I mean, you gave it your best effort, Ben. Um, for John, yeah, obviously having eight players and 15 plus points, that's always going to help. But moving forward, he's definitely going to have to find a replacement for Jonathan Taylor since he's going to be out for at least a few weeks. So that kind of hurts. So he'll have to. He can't play a few of his players. He can't play Jordan Addison or Gabe Davis next week because they're both going to be on buys. So he's right as of right now, he's stuck with Tyler Lockett, or maybe he hopes Devon Achane comes back from injury, or he might pick someone up off of waivers. We'll see how it goes for John there. And then for Ben, I would say, I mean, he has to get a new quarterback because both Josh Dobbs and Justin Fields are going on buys next week. So and this is a critical moment for Ben. He's lost four straight. He's still alive for the playoffs. So Ben's got to either work a trade or pick a quarterback off waivers and hope he does well. Trade deadline for fantasy is tomorrow night. So if you want to make a trade with someone, you got a little over a day to do it. So just a little PSA there. But yeah, Ben's got to get a new quarterback for next week, and then potentially, is AJ Dillon a potential flex play over Chris Godwin? Because Jacoby Myers is going to be, I would say Jacoby Myers, but he's like also going to be on bye next week too. So your options are very limited for the flex play. Chris Godwin has not been playing well recently. He's been very bad, and AJ Dillon's the number one back in Green Bay. Now he's not. His ceiling is not that high, but he has a pretty solid floor. So I think AJ Dillon's, especially since he's the number one back, he's solid enough to get at least 10 points, I'd say, or maybe even like 11 or 12, like he did last week. So definitely something to think about for Ben moving forward on next week. Third matchup, Carey versus Nels. The third one I got wrong. I predicted Dad would win and Carey's winning streak, but nope, Carey keeps on winning. She did pretty well. Dak Prescott continuing his great stretch of football. Great. That was probably Carey's huge pickup for Carey this season that really uh, jump start her team to get this run going for her. Amon-Ra St. Brown did his thing. DJ Moore had another great game. It's crazy because like DJ Moore had put up a lot of points, but the Bears offense didn't. So you just know DJ Moore is just a huge part of that offense. Hollywood Brown had a surprisingly good game, and the kicker Tyler Bass got you 10 points. Whenever you get a kicker getting multiple double digits, that's a win. So yeah, Carey had a majority of her team. And she only had two players in single digits, the tight end and her defense. Everyone else got at least 10 points or more. So that's always a huge factor in terms of, deciding wins or losses right there. For Nels, it was just very tough. Majority of his team underperformed. I mean, he had good performances from Michael Pittman, who seems to be, his most consistent wide receiver this season. And the Dolphins defense, I mean, they play the Jets. Anyone who plays the Jets offense seems to go off for a great week. So good pickup there for Nels. But other than those two, really, I mean, Devontae Adams only had 12 points, Javonte Williams only 10, Lamar Jackson only 14. Everyone else underperformed and just not a good overall week. And it kind of hurts Dad because, Cooper Kupp, he's had a lot of bad games recently. He hasn't played well since like week 6 or week 7. So um, it's something to think about. Does Dad, bench Cooper Kupp for Deebo Samuel? Because Deebo Samuel went off last week and he's been playing a little bit better. Does he's might go with Brian Robinson over Saquon Barkley since Barkley's going to be on a bye. We'll see how it goes for him. Does he go with Najee Harris? Is Harris someone to consider starting? Because he had a good game against Cincy and he's got another bad run defense coming up against the Cardinals next week. Who knows? But it's a very challenging time for Nels too, because he's right there with Ben. Like he's desperate. He needs to get in the playoff spot. He's only one game behind, but with 2 games left, that's not a spot you want to be in. And for Carey moving forward, the only real issue, I mean, Carey's team is starting to really come into good shape. I mean, yeah, her running backs kind of dipped this last week, but that happens from here now. And I think Jahmyr Gibbs will have a nice bounce back game next week. And Breece Hall is one of the better running backs in the game. So I like her running back tandem. And even having James Cook on the bench helps her too with the depth and Chuba Hubbard too. I mean, he had a great game as well. So she's got options at running back. So I don't think that's a weakness for her. For her, it's mainly just tight end. Logan Thomas is just a guy, in my opinion. So maybe Carrie tries to swing for a trade, or maybe Carrie picks up a new tight end who can maybe she can find another or like a what do you call it, a tight end by committee kind of thing. So I don't know. That's the only real issue I see with Carrie's team at this point. She's been playing really well, and she's got another huge matchup this next week against Adrian for battle for first place in the East. Who'd have thought that? Moving on to the fourth game, Garrett versus Tom. I predicted this one right. I said Tom would win, and he did. But it was a lot closer than I thought. That's for sure. Um, Garrett traded for Kyron Williams, who was on Tom's team, and Kyron he almost single-handedly beat Tom. 38.4 points for Kyron Williams. He was just incredible. But easily the best running back performance on for any running back Garrett's played this season by far. He's really good. I expect him to be among the top picks next year. I mean, he had an injury that had him out for some time for quite some time, but when he's healthy and on the field, he's great. Jared Goff had a good game. Mike Evans had a great game, multiple touchdowns for him. Vikings defense and the kicker had 13 points. So Garrett's team was pretty solid overall. It's just four key players really let him down. His running back, Khalil Herbert, DK Metcalf, tight end, George Kittle, and Cortland Sutton. You know, any one of those guys go for 15, and Garrett's got this win easily, but it was just those four really let him down. For Tom, you know, he had Tyreek Hill do his thing. Devontae Smith had a great game. TJ Hawkinson, you know, that Monday night game where it was just Garrett had Khalil and Hawkinson Tom had Hawkinson. Garrett was ahead at that point, and Hawkinson just had a much better game, and that's what put Uncle Tom over the top. But yeah, and then like the rest of his line, Mahomes did pretty well. Montgomery did good. So uh, yeah, like those were the top performers for those two. Super tough luck for Garrett though, because it was just that last day where Hawkinson versus Herbert when Garrett was already up. So just what can you do? And he played it perfectly too, because everyone on his bench did pretty poorly. So yeah, tough luck for Garrett. Moving forward, Garrett's just going to need to find a new defense for next week, and maybe a new running back too, because Khalil Herbert's going on a bye. So I mean, maybe if Aaron Jones is healthy, I don't know if he's going to be healthy. So Garrett's probably got to find a new running back and a new defense for next week. But other than that, pretty solid starting lineup for him. Just tough luck against Tom. And then for Tom, what is he going to do with Justin Jefferson? That's the key for me. I mean, he already clinched number one seed. So is he going to try to you know, is he going to let off the gas, just like coast the rest of the regular season, or is he? I mean, I'm sure he'll probably try to still win and all that, but um, it's just interesting, you know, like Josh Jacobs, he benches him, he goes off. Jalen Warren, he starts him, doesn't do well. But yeah, Justin Jefferson, when he comes back off IR, especially with how bad the Vikings offense has looked the past couple of weeks, you know, is that something to be worried about? Is it something like, oh no, did I just trade away Kyron Williams, a great running back, for a star receiver with no good quarterback? Like it's a tough situation to think about, especially when you have three other good receivers at your disposal with Tyreek, Ayuk, and Devontae Smith. So I'm very intrigued to see how Tom's going to handle this, you know, in the playoffs. So, or even if Justin Jefferson, who knows how well he'll do with Dobbs, or maybe even a different quarterback. There's talks that maybe the Vikings have a different starting quarterback moving forward. Who knows? But we'll see. And then finally, moving on to the last game, Adrian versus Carol. I predicted this one correct. I said Carol would win easily, and she did. So she definitely helped out Carrie in her quest to get the division title. She tried to help out Nelson Ben, but Nelson Ben just couldn't jump on the opportunity. For Adrian, Ramondre Stevenson was his best performer. CeeDee Lamb did pretty well. Howell did pretty well, even though they got blown out. And Stephon Diggs had a great game. He had a nice bounce back game for him after two just weeks of struggling. For Carol, though, she had a lot of her players do well. She only had two players in single digits, similar to Carrie, her kicker and Joe Mixon. But everyone else had at least 11 points or more, you know. Isaiah Pacheco went off for 25 points. Zay Flowers had the best game of his young career. That was great for him. And Jalen Hurts, 34 and a half points. I mean, that's insane. What a great game. That game between Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, you get two quarterbacks both getting 34 plus points. That's nuts. But yeah, Carroll just had a great overall performance by her entire team. Yeah, only two players in single digits for her. For Adrian, it was just the majority of his team underperformed their projections. You know, DeAndre Swift didn't have a good game. Hopkins going up against a young defense that didn't, he didn't do well. Kyle Pitts, the injury to Mark Andrews seems to be kind of huge. So it's tough when you lose such a solid tight end in fantasy and you have to go with the guy who you never know what you're going to get from Kyle Pitts. And then defense, I think Adrian might need to find a new defense because the Eagles are playing San Francisco next week and Bengals are just their defense hasn't really been that impressive lately. Um, so yeah, but moving forward, yeah, Adrian's tight end situation not looking good. He's gonna have to replace Diggs next week because Stephon Diggs going on a bye. What a tough time for one of your better players to go on a bye when you're in a huge playoff race and you still haven't clinched yet and there's only 2 weeks left. Diggs gonna be on a bye, so I'm guessing he'll probably start Drake London next week, or he'll pick up someone, or maybe go with Gus Edwards at flex or no, because Gus Edwards is on a bye next week, so he can't. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for Adrian moving forward without Mark Andrews and Stephon Diggs next week. Um, and then for Carol, I would say, Zay Flowers is going on a bye next week as well, so she has some options to go with. She could easily go with Nico Collins at wide receiver too. He's been playing pretty well, and especially last week. So, but she has an option there to fill for Zay Flowers when he's on his bye. Carol's just trying to play spoiler at this point, but it's fun. It's fantasy. Might as well try to at least ruin someone's playoff hopes if you can. Um, so yeah, those were all the matchups from this past weekend. And looking one last look at the final projections for the standings from draft day to now. Tom still hanging strong at number one. Moving up to number two, Adrian still at two. Carrie all the way up from 9 to 3. That's a huge jump from draft day. Joan at 4. John Lopp is up to 5 with his win. Ben's down to 6. Down to 7 is Nels. He started off really strong this season. He just hasn't looked that well. As he texted me earlier this week, like your fantasy stars should be stars, but they're not. So, Carol down to 8, myself at 9, and Garrett in last at 10. With Garrett trending down the most from draft day and trending up the most, we have Carrie plus 6, Adrian and Ben. So that is that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will have a week 13 prediction video out in a few days. I will also include all the playoff scenarios, the clinching scenarios, who needs to win, what needs to happen for people to clinch, etc. Who to root for who. If you're in a tough position and you need someone else, you're relying on someone else to lose as well. And yeah, tomorrow's the trade deadline, so last chance to make any trades for players on other teams, or you'll just have to pick someone off waivers if you can't trade. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night and a good rest of your week. Yeah, and I'll see you in another video later this week for the predictions. So signing off, Paul Jensen for the DFFFP. Have a good night, everyone.